drops spilled out of the corners of his mouth, flowing through his black beard. Elegant braids, the work of untold hours, hung from his chin and rested on his chest like delicate cords. Glandalin replaced the pouch, took his weapons from his belt, and laid them on the parapet. The steel axe heads jangled melodiously against the sculpted rock, carved like the rest of the stronghold from the mountain's flesh. A ray of sunlight glowed red on the polished inscriptions, illuminating the runes and symbols that promised their bearer protection, a sure aim, and long life. Glandalin turned to the north, his brown eyes sweeping the mountain pass, 30 paces across, that led from the watchtower into the outer lands. No one knew what lay there. In times gone by, human kings had dispatched adventurers in all directions, but the expeditions were rarely successful, and the few who returned to the gateway brought orcs in their wake. He scanned the pass carefully. The beasts learned nothing from their defeats. Their vicious, choleric minds compelled them to throw themselves against the dwarves' defenses. They were bent on destroying anyone and anything in their path, for their creator, the Dark Lord Tion, had made them that way. The raids were conducted in blind fury. Raging and screaming, the beasts would scale the walls. From the first tinges of dawn light until the setting of the sun, armor would be cleaved from flesh and flesh from bone. A tide of black, dark green and yellowy brown blood would lap against the impregnable gates, while battering rams and projectiles shattered as they hit the stone. The children of Vrakas suffered casualties, deaths, and crippling injuries too, yet it never occurred to them to quarrel with their fate. They were dwarves, Girdlegard's staunchest defenders. And yet we were almost defeated. Glandalin's thoughts turned again to the strange beings that had invaded the underground halls, killing many of his kinsfolk. No one had seen them approach. Outwardly they resembled elves, tall, slim, and graceful, but as warriors they were savage and ruthless. Glandalin was almost certain that the creatures were not elves. There was no love lost between the dwarves and their pointy-eared neighbors. Vrakas and Citalia, goddess and creator of the elves, had ordained the races with common loathing from the moment of their birth. Their differences had resulted in feuds, the occasional skirmish, and sometimes death, but never war. Then again, he thought critically, I might be wrong. Perhaps the elves hate us enough to draw arms against us, or maybe they're after our gold. A bitter northerly wind whistled round the mountaintops, gusting through Glandalin's braided beard. Suddenly, his brow furrowed angrily as his nostrils detected a stench that offended the core of his being. Orcs. Spilled blood, excrement, and filth, that was the perfume of orcs, mixed in with the rancid odor of their greasy apparel. They basted their armor with fat, believing that the dwarves' axes would slither over the metal and leave them unharmed. No amount of fat will save them. Glandalin did not wait for the ragged banners and rusty spears to appear over the final incline of the path. Standing on tiptoe, he placed his calloused hands on the coarse wooden handles of the bellows. A low drone vibrated through the shafts and galleries of the Fifthling Kingdom. The dwarf worked 2 bellows in rotation to produce a constant stream of air. Gathering in volume, the drone became a single piercing note, loud enough to rouse the soundest of sleepers. Now, as so often in their history, the Fifthlings were being summoned to fulfill their noble duty as Girdlegard's protectors. Sweating from the exertion, Glandalin glanced over his shoulder. Tion's beasts had formed a wide front and were marching on the gateway, more numerous than ever before. Elves would have fled to the woods, and a man's heart would have stopped at the sight of the monstrous hordes. The dwarf stood his ground. The attack on the gateway came as no surprise to Glandalin, but the timing was unsettling. The coming battle would stretch the dwarves' resources more than usual. More bloodshed and more death. The defending warriors lined up on the battlements on either side of the gateway, their movements slow, some lurching rather than walking, weak fingers wrapped loosely around the hafts of their axes. The band of dwarves stumbling to the defense of the gates numbered no more than 100 brave souls. 1,000 would have been too few. Glandalin's